Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode until the question-and-answer session of today's conference. At that time, you may press star 1 on your phone to ask a question. I would like to inform all parties that today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the conference over to Ms. Pooja Patel. Thank you. You may begin.
Great. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Pooja Patel, and I am the program manager for the CDFI program and the NACA program within the CDFI Fund. As a reminder, today's webinar will be recorded, and it will be available on our website along with all of our other application materials after the call is done. A link to all of these materials will be provided later in our presentation. Next slide, please. Great, and as we pull up the next slide, this next slide summarizes the topics that we will be covering today. We will start off by providing a short overview of the CDFI Fund, as well as overviews of the fiscal year 2024 CDFI program, NACA program overviews. We will then talk a little bit about preparing applications, completing narrative responses, and application financial data. We will also provide an overview of matching funds and supplemental program information and talk about the application review process as well as reminders. As noted earlier, at the end, we will also have time reserved at the end of the call for any questions and answers. Next slide, please. And before we get started, I just want to note that there are some topics that we will not be covering today. So today we will not be going over why an organization was unsuccessful in past years or providing instructions on how to enter application data into the CDFI Fund's award management system, also known as AMIS. Additionally, we will not be addressing and answering matching funds questions that are specific to individual organizations. We will deal with those via service request. And finally, today we will not be answering questions about the revised CDFI certification application or the process for coming into compliance with and or obtaining CDFI certification via the new application. For those questions, we ask that you visit the CDFI certification page, and again, a link will be provided at the end of the presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleagues to take over and get us started on the rest of the presentation. Today with me, I have Matthew Pickering and Annie Kraft, who are both Associate Program Managers within the CDFI program and NACA program unit, and I will hand it off to them to get us going.
Great, thank you, Pooja. Next slide, please. So we're going to start off with a sort of very high-level, broad overview of the CDFI Fund and the CDFI and NACA program. Real quick, our mission at the CDFI Fund is to expand economic opportunity for underserved people and communities by supporting the growth and capacity of a national network of community development lenders, investors, and financial service providers. Next slide. Our vision at the CDFI Fund is an America in which all people and communities have access to the investment capital and financial services they need to prosper. Next slide. So at the CDFI Fund, we accomplish our mission and vision by investing and supporting CDFIs, CDEs, and other community development organizations through a variety of grant, tax credit, and guarantee programs, including the Bank Enterprise Award Program, Capital Magnet Fund, Bond Guarantee Program, Equitable Recovery Program, Community Development Financial Institutions, or CDFI program, the subject of today's webinar, CDFI Rapid Response Program, New Markets Tax Credit Program, and the Native American CDFI Assistance Program, or NACA program, which we'll also be talking about today, and the Small Dollar Loan Program. Next slide. So the purpose of the CDFI and NACA program is both to promote economic revitalization and community development through investment and assistance to CDFIs, and also to build capacity of for and nonprofit community-based lending organizations to serve rural and urban low-income people and communities across the nation lacking access to affordable financial products and services. Next slide. So the moment everybody's been waiting for, I suppose, is we're going to have a quick discussion of the major changes to the application for the fiscal year 2024 funding round. Those of you who have already read and opened the NOFA have noticed that we have combined appropriations this year from 2 fiscal years, those being FY 2023 and 2024. And as a result, there is a higher amount of funds available this year than would be available in a typical funding year, in a typical annual funding round. Accordingly, we have increased the maximum award request amounts and maximum award sizes in the NOFA, and we'll be talking more in detail about how those award request sizes have changed later in the presentation. And we've also implemented a new Title VI compliance worksheet requirement, the requirement across the CDFI fund, and we'll talk a little bit more about that today as well. We've added Filipino, Vietnamese, and persons with disabilities to the pre-approved list of other targeted populations. And as opposed to prior years, we are no longer asking management letters be submitted as attachments to the application. Instead, we have built out some questions and sections within the application that are designed to get at the information that normally would be contained in a management letter. So regardless of whether your organization did or did not receive a management letter, using these sections of the application, we should be able to get the information that we're looking for there. Next slide, please. So changes specific to the FA program this year, the biggest one I would imagine is that for this year only, for FY 2024, uncertified CDFIs are eligible to apply for FA, provided they meet certain requirements. Those requirements include they first must submit a certification application by a deadline that's stated in the NOFA, and they must also become certified or achieve CDFI certification prior to the award announcement. And that is a topic we'll also be talking more about later on in the presentation. We've updated the process by which CEQA qualified applicants can select to apply as core applicants. In the past, it was necessary for a CEQA applicant who wished to apply under the core program to submit a service request and go through a sort of manual process to get that done. This year, we've designed something out in AMIS that allows those CEQA groups wishing to apply for core to do so on their own during the launch sequence of the application. For FA objectives, we've simplified FA objective selection by removing some of the rarely used FA objectives and limiting all applications to only one FA objective at a time, or one FA objective per application. And we've also modified our FA objective formulas to account for final award size, which is a topic that my colleague Annie will talk a lot more about later on. The next slide, please. So we have generally 4 different broad types of organizations that can become certified CDFIs, and those include loan funds, credit unions, banks, and depository institution holding companies, and venture capital funds. Next slide. And we also have 4 certification categories, only 2 of which are applicable to the FA program. So today we'll be talking a little bit more about certified CDFIs and certifiable CDFIs. Emerging and CDFIs and sponsoring entities are applicable only to the TA program. Next slide, please. So we define a certified CDFI as an entity that the CDFI fund has officially notified that it's meeting all the CDFI certification requirements. A couple of notes on that. If you are a CDFI fund that might have pending non-compliance issues with your annual certification report, ACR, if the CDFI fund has not yet made a final compliance determination, we will consider an application submitted by you as an applicant. And if you are a certified CDFI that loses your certification at any point prior to the award announcement, the application you submitted will be deemed ineligible and no longer considered by the CDFI fund. Next slide, please. So certifiable CDFIs are uncertified FA applicants that have submitted a certification application to the CDFI fund, demonstrating that they meet the CDFI certification requirements, although they have not yet been officially certified. As I mentioned before, to apply for FA as a certifiable CDFI, you must submit a CDFI certification application by the deadline specified in the applicable NOFA, which we will talk about today. And we also want to let everyone know who may be considering applying as a certifiable CDFI that the CDFI fund will make CDFI certification determinations for all applicants that are certifiable CDFIs prior to the award announcement date. If the CDFI certification application that you submitted is denied, you as the uncertified applicant will not be eligible to receive an FA award in the FY 2024 funding round. Next slide, please. So broadly under the CDFI and NACA program, we have two types of awards, financial assistance and technical assistance. We had a webinar yesterday afternoon covering technical assistance, so we won't talk about that today, but that recording will be up on the website soon if you're interested in learning more about TA. Today we're going to talk about financial assistance, which includes the base financial assistance or base FA, which is the application that all FA applicants must fill out. And underneath base FA, there are several supplemental applications that an organization can apply for, including Persistent Poverty Counties Financial Assistance, or PPCFA, Disability Funds Financial Assistance, DFFA, or Healthy Foods Financing Initiative, HFFI-FA. Next slide, please. So the next couple of slides have lots of information on them, so bear with me. We're not going to go over every single word on here, but try to hit more of a high-level summary of what we're talking about here. But rest assured, as Pooja mentioned, this presentation is on the website of the CDFI Fund. You can access all of these slides, and all of the information here is posted elsewhere, either in the NOFA or our application guidance, also posted on the website. So for base FA, eligibility is contingent upon you being a certified or certifiable CDFI. And as I mentioned previously, certifiable CDFIs have to submit a certification application and become certified as stated in the NOFA. Matching funds are required for core FA applicants, including their PPCFA and DFFA applications as well. And award funds will be limited to no more than twice the amount of in-hand or committed matching funds that are submitted at the time of application. Smaller emerging CDFI assistance or SECA base FA applicants, as well as HFFI FA applicants, are not required to submit matching funds at the time of application. And Native American CDFIs are not required to submit matching funds at all under the CDFI program. You'll notice here that the award amounts have changed, as I mentioned previously. So for the CDFI program base FA, Category 1 SECA maximum award request is $1.4 million this year. There's no change to the minimum award request amount of $125,000, and we estimate this year's average CEQA award to be $667,000. For Category 2 core applications, the maximum award request amount is $2 million this year. Minimum is not changing at $500,000, and there are some additional rules there that we'll go over later. And we estimate the average core FA size to be around $1.1 million. Next slide, please. Awards that require matching funds for base FA are going to be based on the type of matching funds provided, as in prior years. Base FA award can be in the form of loans, grants, equity investments, or deposits in credit union shares, depending on what type of matching funds you submit. If you're an applicant that is exempt from matching funds, or an application component is exempt from matching funds, that piece of the award will be issued in the form of a grant. Eligible activities under base FA are financial products and services, loan loss reserves, development services, and capital reserves. And the eligible lines of business are commercial real estate, small business, micro enterprise, community facilities, community financial products, consumer financial services, commercial financial services, commercial financial products, affordable housing, intermediary lending to nonprofits and CDFIs, climate-centered financing, and other lines of business deemed appropriate by the CDFI fund. Reporting period for all FA awards is 3 years, and there are a couple of limitations on base FA awards under the CDFI program. An applicant may apply for either FA or TA under the CDFI program, but never both. And the CDFI fund, as in prior years, is limited or prohibited from obligating more than $5 million in CDFI and NACA awards to any one organization along with its subsidiaries and affiliates during any 3-year period. Note that that excludes DFFA and HFFI, but this $5 million cap this year will be calculated including funding received this year during the FY24 funding round and any funds you or your affiliates may have received in 2022. Next slide. So the NACA program, base FA, is quite similar to the CDFI program with a couple of key differences. You still have to be a certified or certifiable CDFI in order to apply, but you must also demonstrate that at least half of your past activities were in one or more Native communities, and describe how you'll target lending and investing activities to one or more Native communities. In addition, you have to have a certified target market with certain characteristics, and there are never matching funds required for FA applicants applying under the NACA program. Maximum award amount. The maximum request for base FA under NACA is $2 million with a minimum of $150,000. We estimate the average NACA base FA award this year to be around $1.8 million. And all awards under NACA will be in the form of a grant. Next slide. The eligible activities and lines of business for NACA are the same as under the CDFI program, as is the reporting period at 3 years. There are a couple of additional limitations on awards for the NACA program. Again, you can apply for either FA or TA under the NACA program, but not both. However, NACA applicants may submit applications under both NACA and CDFI programs, with the caveat that you can only receive one award per funding round. So if you're a NACA applicant that applies under and is selected for an award in both the NACA and CDFI program, you'll ultimately receive the FA award under the CDFI program. The same $5 million 3-year funding cap applies to NACA as well. Next slide, please. So now we'll move on to Persistent Poverty Counties Financial Assistance, PPCFA. Okay. To be eligible for PPC, you have to be the same as with base FA, a certified or certifiable CDFI. And just to note that those eligibility requirements are going to be the same across all supplemental applications, because in order to apply for a supplemental, you have to have applied for base FA. Matching funds are required for certain applicants of PPCFA, those being core applicants. SECA and SECA PPC applicants and those qualifying as Native American CDFIs are not required to submit matching funds. This year's maximum award request amount is $600,000 for PPCFA. The minimum request is $100,000, and we estimate the average award this year to be just around $300,000. The form of awards will match the form of matching funds if matching funds are applicable. And if matching funds are not required, the form of the award will be a grant. The eligible activities for PPC are financial products, services, loan loss reserves, development services, and capital reserves. All of those things must be in the either in the approved target market, part of a persistent poverty county, or in an eligible market located in a persistent poverty county. Next slide, please. So PPCFA awards may be expended for the same eligible lines of business as the base FA. The reporting period is the same at 3 years. And the limitation on award is that, as I mentioned before, you have to receive a base FA award in order to receive PPC. And this PPC is also calculated as part of that $5 million 3-year funding cap. Next slide, please. For DFFA, we're talking the same eligibility requirements, same matching fund requirements. Our award amount is a maximum of $1 million. That's the amount that you can request this year. The minimum award is $100,000, and the estimated average is $1 million this year. The forms of the award are subject to whether matching funds are applicable. If they're not, the award will be in the form of a grant. And the eligible activities for DFFA are financial products, services, development services, and loan loss reserves. Next slide, please. So the eligible lines of business and reporting period are the same as with the base FA and PPCFA. And the only limitation on that of DFFA awards is that an applicant must receive a base FA award in order to receive DFFA, because DFFA is not calculated as part of the $5 million 3-year funding cap. Next slide, please. And the last supplemental we're going to talk about is HFFIFA. Same eligibility requirements as base FFA. Matching funds are not required of any applicant at the time of application. And if you're a Native American CDFI, you are not required to submit matching funds, period. The award amount request, maximum award request, is $10 million for HFFIFA. The minimum award request is $500,000, and we are estimating the average award size this year at $4.8 million. All HFFI awards will be in the form of a grant, and the eligible activities under HFFI are financial products, loan loss reserves, development services, and capital reserves. Eligible lines of business are the same as the other programs, as is the reporting period at 3 years, and the limitation on HFFI is that you must also receive base FA in order to receive HFFI. And now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Annie Kraft, to take us through the next parts of the presentation today.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. Next slide, please. I'm going to be covering the next couple of presentation topics, starting with preparing your FA application. Next slide, please. In terms of framing the application process, there are three main components that we're going to cover today. First is the pre-application steps, then the application itself, as well as the submission and review process. Again, we're going to be addressing all three components throughout this presentation, but I do want to take a moment to focus on the pre-application steps. There are many things an applicant needs to do prior to launching an application in our Awards Management Information System, or AMIS. First, all applicants need to have an active SAM.gov account. Even if your organization has already registered with SAM.gov and you have an account, please make sure it is still active, as these do lapse. Additionally, all applicants must have a grants.gov account. Grants.gov is the system through which you will submit your SF-424 or application for federal assistance. Both SAM.gov and Grants.gov are external systems that the CDFI Fund does not manage or maintain. However, we do have a lot of helpful information on our website, and we will show you later in this presentation where you can find those. Lastly, you'll need to either create an AMIS account if you do not already have one, or update your existing AMIS account. If you have not started on these steps already, I encourage you to do so as soon as possible, because they're critical to your ability to apply for FA, and they can take a bit of time. Next slide, please. The next couple of slides highlight critical deadlines for all applicants. I do want to point out that these deadlines are also in our NOFAs as well as on our web pages. A couple of important dates that you need to pay attention to. The first critical deadline is January 16th, 2024. This is the deadline for creating an AMIS account, entering your employer identification number, or EIN, and unique entity identifier, UEI, in AMIS, as well as the deadline for submitting the SF-424 via grants.gov. The second critical deadline is February 15th, 2024. This is the deadline to submit the Title VI compliance worksheet as well as the application itself via AMIS. Next slide, please. The third critical deadline is March 5th, 2024, and this is specific to certifiable CDFI. March 5th is the deadline to submit a CDFI certification application. And again, as Matthew explained earlier, our certification team will be making decisions on those certification applications prior to our FA award announcement. And only organizations that do become certified will be eligible to receive an FA award. Next slide, please. Switching gears here, I'm now going to cover the application itself, which includes both narrative responses and application data. As a reminder, the FA application, which includes, again, both the narrative and financial data, are completed within AMIS. Next slide, please. This slide shows our application components at a very high level. I will be diving a little bit deeper into each of them in subsequent slides, but want to point out a few things here. First, all FA applicants will complete general and administrative information in AMIS. Additionally, the matching fund section is specific to FA core applicants. As Matthew noted earlier, the matching funds requirement is not applicable to native CDFIs, so they do not need to complete that portion of the application. There are 7 categories of narrative questions, again, which I'll go into a little bit greater detail in later. In addition to application financial data for 3 historic fiscal years, the current fiscal year, as well as 3 projected fiscal years. And finally, applicants will select and complete the corresponding section for 1 FA objective. As we already indicated, this year we are limiting all applicants to 1 FA objective per application. Next slide, please. As Matthew noted, there are 3 supplemental programs, PPC-FA, DF-FA, and HFFI-FA. Applicants that are eligible and choose to apply for any of these supplemental programs do so using the same interface as their base FA application in AMIS. Each supplemental application includes funding application details, narrative responses, as well as AMIS charts where you'll input various information. Again, an organization must receive a base FA award in order to receive any of these supplementals. And additionally, all 3 of these supplemental applications are evaluated independently of the base FA award request. Next slide, please. There are multiple required attachments to the application depending on the applicant type. All applicants will upload key staff resumes as well as an organizational chart. Non-regulated applicants specifically, which include loan funds and venture capital funds, will upload audited financial statements for their 3 most recent historic fiscal years. And a quick note here on audited financial statements, they need to be only for the CDFI applicant itself. If an applicant's audited financial statements are consolidated with other entities, then the applicant should also attach either unconsolidated versions or note where in the audit the unconsolidated financials are located. If your organization does not have audited financial statements for the 3 most recent historic fiscal years, you should use unaudited financial statements. Additionally, if your organization is too new to have these, our guidance includes very detailed instructions for how to handle that, which involves uploading a letter indicating that your organization is too new into the application. As Matthew noted, we no longer are requiring the management letter. Instead, we have an attestation that is built into the application itself. Next slide, please. FA applicants that are applying with a community partner must attach their community partnership agreement. In addition, all core applicants using retained earnings as matching funds must attach the retained earnings calculator Excel workbook. And all regulated institutions using retained earnings as matching funds must also attach call reports for each fiscal year that is reported in that retained earnings calculator. And lastly, applicants using equity investments or deposits as matching funds will need to upload supporting documentation as well. We will also be having specific matching fund webinars as well. We also have matching fund guidance on our website that goes into much greater detail on those specific requirements. Next slide, please. The base FA application consists of multiple narrative responses and data entry in AMIS, as well as the attachments that I just referred to. The base FA application narrative includes 7 sections: mission and community needs, business strategy, products and services impacts, market and competitive analysis, management and track record, financial position, and growth and projections. Next slide, please. FA awards, including the supplemental programs, can only be used for eligible activities in an eligible market or the applicant's approved target market. FA eligible activities do differ by institution type. Financial products, loan loss reserves, and development services are eligible activity types for all institution types. Financial services is an eligible activity category for regulated institutions only, as are capital reserves. And I do want to point out the note we have at the bottom of this slide. Although some financial education for youth under 18 years old do not fall under the definition of development services and thus are not eligible for certification, the CDFI fund does allow FA award funds to be used to provide this financial education. A couple additional factors: the financial education for youth means that the education is designed to prepare youth to engage with the financial system, including accessing financial products when they are legally able to, either through the applicant or a third party. Next slide, please. As Matthew noted earlier in the presentation, applicants must use an FA award in the following eligible lines of business. I'm not going to read each individual line here. However, I do want to point out that climate-centered financing, the second to last bullet point, is new for the fiscal year 2024 funding round. And then for those of you who are more familiar with our FA program, the other eligible lines of business should look familiar. Next slide, please. With the exception of depository institution holding company applicants, awards may not be used to support the activities of or be passed to third-party entities, such as affiliates, subsidiaries, or others, unless it is done pursuant to a merger, acquisition, or similar transaction, and with the CDFI fund's prior written consent. In other words, the applicant applying for and receiving the award must be the entity carrying out that award, with the exception of depository institution holding company applicants. Next slide, please. As we've mentioned a few times now, we are only allowing applicants in the 2024 funding round to select one FA objective. There are 5 FA objectives that applicants can choose from, which you see displayed here on the screen. I do want to point out that although the CDFI fund has eliminated 2 FA objectives, 1.5, new financial services, and 1.6, new development services, applicants may still use their FA awards for new financial services or new or existing development services, provided they select one of these 5 FA objectives, and explain how these activities support the selected FA objective. Additionally, regulated applicants that want to add a new financial service can select FA Objective 1.2, and then that new financial service will contribute to the overall increase in volume associated with FAO 1.2. Next slide, please. Okay, a few tips here to keep in mind related to FA Objective as you're completing your application. Again, applicants are limited to only one. If awarded, an applicant's selected FA objective will become a performance goal and measure, or a PG&M, in the assistance agreement. Additionally, if an applicant does not receive its full base FA award request, its PG&Ms will be prorated or adjusted downward based on the percentage of the award request versus the amount awarded. Now on the screen here, we have an example to show you exactly what this could potentially look like. So let's say, for example, that an applicant selects SA Objective 1.1 to increase their volume of financial products. And in the application in AMIS, they project $50 million in financial products closed in an eligible market or their approved target market over the 3-year period of performance. And let's also say that this applicant requested $2 million in base FA. Ultimately, if the CDFI fund awards them $1 million or half of their request, we will reduce those projections by half when we're creating the PG&M and the assistance agreement. So in this specific example, they projected $50 million. They received 50% of their award request, so the PG&M would reflect $25 million or half of that original. Next slide, please. Financial information entered in the application in AMIS should be for the applicant that will expend and carry out the activities of the FA award. Additionally, applicants should not include off-balance sheet activity for projected financial activity for the FA objectives in the application. Projected activity must also be in an eligible market or the applicant's approved target market, with the exception of FA Objective 1.7, new targeted populations, which I will address a little bit later so you can see exactly why that one is different. Next slide, please. At this point, I am going to take a deeper dive into our 5 FA objectives. Now, these slides have a lot of information, so I am going to only cover the highlights. I'm not going to read every bullet point. But again, please keep in mind that these slides, in addition to others, are available on our website, and all of this information is elsewhere in our application materials. So for FA Objective 1.1, an applicant's 3 years of projected activity must be greater than the sum of its 3 years of historic activity. And again, applicants should only include on-balance sheet activity in an eligible market or approved target market. Applicants that select FA Objective 1.1 this funding round and have an outstanding fiscal year 2022 award with PG&M 1.1 must exceed the volume of financial products projected in their 2022 assistance agreement for any overlapping years. And we have examples of this specific scenario in our application guidance. If awarded, the final PG&M for 1.1 will be prorated, again, based on the percentage of the request awarded. Next slide, please. Applicants with projections that do not exceed historic lending due to unusually high and anomalous historic activity can still select FA Objective 1.1 only if that anomalous historic activity is tied to one-time funding related to an emergency response, which we defined as historic on-balance sheet activity resulting from the receipt of one-time or non-recurring emergency funding by the applicant. So we also have we have examples on this slide of occurrences that are not considered valid reasons, such as increased charge-offs or modifications or general economic downturns, among others. Applicants must provide the dollar amount of this anomalous historic activity as well as a detailed justification. And again, I encourage anyone in this situation to refer to our FA application guidance for more detailed information and examples. Next slide, please. As is the case with FA Objective 1.1, FA Objective 1.2, increased volume of financial services, For this FA objective, an applicant's 3 years of projected activity also must be greater than its 3 years of historic activity. And again, applicants that select this objective, this funding round, that have outstanding 2022 awards with this PG&M must exceed the volume of financial services projected in their 2022 assistance agreements for any overlapping years. And again, this PG&M will also be prorated based on the percentage of the request awarded. Next slide, please. FA Objective 1.3 is to serve new geographic areas. We define a new geographic area as one that accounts for 5% or less of the applicant's outstanding portfolio averaged over its 3 most recent historic fiscal years. The new geographic area can be a state, a U.S. territory, or a county. Next slide, please. If awarded, the final PG&M for FAO 1.3 will be based on the projected activity in the new geographic area over the 3-year period of performance. And again, that will be prorated based on the award request compared to the award amount compared to request. Next slide, please. FA Objective 1.4 is new financial products. To qualify as a new financial product, the proposed new financial product must constitute 5% or less of the applicant's outstanding portfolio as of its most recently completed historic fiscal year. And again, the final PG&M will be based on the projected activity over this 3-year period of performance for that new financial product. And again, it will be prorated. Next slide, please. Last but not least is FA Objective 1.7 to serve new targeted populations. I'm sorry, next slide, please, DeAndre. FA Objective 1.7 to serve new targeted populations is a little bit different than the others. This FA objective involves applicants proposing to serve a new targeted population or populations that they're not currently approved to serve. The final PG&M is not a dollar amount derived from financial projections. Instead, PG&Ms for this FA objective will involve the submission of a target market modification request by the end of year 2 of the period of performance, and to be approved to serve that new targeted population by the end of year 3 of the period of performance. And an important note for certifiable applicants that want to select FAO 1.7, the new targeted population proposed in your FA application must be different than the targeted population proposed in your organization's pending certification application. Applicants that propose the same targeted population in both their FA application and CDFI certification application may be removed from award consideration as part of the due diligence review. So we encourage anyone that is selecting this FAO that is a certifiable applicant to think through these targeted populations as well as the deadlines for and the timing of when you submit each application. Next slide, please. Okay, so the last few slides I have to walk through are about our supplemental programs. And again, there's a lot of commonalities between our 3 supplemental programs, so I'm not going to reiterate the repeat information. But PPC FA awards will be provided as a supplement to base FA, and they are evaluated independently. PPC recipients will be required to close 100% of the PPC FA award or equivalent funds in financial products by the end of the 3-year period of performance into a PPC. Next slide, please. DSFA awards are similar to PPC in that they're also a supplement to base FA and they're evaluated independently. For the purposes of DSFA, a person with a disability is a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, a person who has a record of such an impairment, or being regarded as having such an impairment as defined by the Americans with Disabilities Act. Recipients that receive a DSFA award will be responsible for closing loans, equity investments, and similar financing that benefit individuals with disabilities in an amount equal to or greater than 85% of the total DSFA award. Next slide, please. For HFFI, these are also provided as a supplement to base FA and are evaluated independently. HFFI FA-eligible financing includes activities to healthy food retail and healthy food non-retail outlets where the majority of the loan or investment is devoted to offering a range of healthy food choices. Examples include investment supporting an existing retail or wholesale operation to upgrade or offer expanded healthy food choices, or perhaps supporting a nonprofit that expands healthy food choices in an underserved area. Next slide, please. For HFFI, we use definitions from the USDA for healthy foods and healthy food retail outlets. These specific definitions are in our NOFA and in the HFFI application guidance. Those groups that receive an HFFI award will be responsible for closing financial products for healthy food retail outlets and non-retail outlets in their approved target market, either equal to or greater than 100% of their total HFFI award. And additionally, they will also be responsible for closing financial products in their approved target market in an amount equal to 75% of the HFFI amount in food deserts specifically. And again, these definitions are detailed in our NOFA and HFFI application guidance materials. Thanks for bearing with me through all of that information. At this point, I'm going to hand it back to my colleague Matthew to cover the next topic.
Great. Thank you, Annie. Next slide, please, DeAndre. And thanks, everybody, for sticking with us as we work our way to the question and answer portion of the presentation at the end. So I am going to go over some very high-level information about matching funds today, but this is by no means a comprehensive matching funds review. Please note that we are having a matching funds webinar that will cover nothing but matching funds on January 23rd. You can find information about that webinar on our website, which we'll navigate you to later on in the presentation today. Okay, so next slide, please. So as we said before, matching funds are required for any CDFI program core applicants, again, except native CDFIs, at the time of application submission for the total of your base FA, PPCFA, and DSFA requests. Your award will ultimately match the type of matching funds you provided. So for example, if you provide grant matching funds, your award will be in the form of a grant. At the time of application, you are required to provide evidence that you have at least 50% of your requested award amount in either in-hand or committed matching funds or a combination thereof. Next slide. So the matching funds window, which means that in order to be eligible as a source of match for this year's funding round, that matching fund source must have been received by your organization between January 1st, 2022 to January 15th, 2025. If you're talking about a matching fund source that you've received between January 1st, 2022 and the application deadline, we'll be considering that to be in hand, already received, and any matching funds that you list in your application to be received after the application deadline but before the close of the matching funds window, those sources will be considered as committed. If you're selected to receive an award, you will be required to provide evidence that you have 100% of the award's matching funds needed in hand before we make a payment. And if less than 100% of your matching funds are in hand at the time of your application submission, we do give you until January 31st of 2025 to provide us with evidence that you have received all of your matching funds in hand by the close of the window. Next slide, please. We hinted at before the matching funds requirement for CEQA FA and HFFI FA applicants was waived in the 2023 CDFI NACA appropriations, but final FY 2024 appropriations are still pending. And in addition to that, matching funds requirements were permanently waived for Native American CDFIs applying through either the CDFI or NACA program. So CEQA FA and HFFI applicants, as well as Native CDFI applicants, are not required to submit matching funds at the time of application submission. But the CDFI fund reserves the right to request matching funds from either CEQA FA or HFFI FA applicants if matching funds are not waived in the final FY24 appropriations. And matching funds are never required for TA, whether in the CDFI or NACA program. Next slide. So the last portion of today's slide deck presentation is talking about the application review evaluation process. Next slide. So we have a two-step process for submitting your application that requires you to submit different documents on different deadlines in one of two systems. So the first deadline is January 16th, 2024 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. By this time, you have to have created your AMIS account, submitted your SF424 via grants.gov, and entered your EIN and UEI in your AMIS account. And then later, on or before February 15th, 2024 at 11:59 Eastern, you must complete and submit your CDFI or NACA program application in AMIS, and that includes submitting the Title VI compliance worksheet and all required application documents. Note, if you're an uncertified FA applicant, you'll also have an additional deadline by which you have to submit your CDFI certification application. Next slide. So there are 5 steps to the FA application evaluation process, and step 1 is an eligibility review where we ensure that every applicant met all of the eligibility requirements detailed in the FY24 NOFAs. And we're not going to talk about all of those eligibility criteria today, but you can refer to tables 5, 6, and 8 in the NOFA to learn more about those eligibility criteria. Step 2 of the 5-step process, next slide please. Step 2 of the evaluation process is the financial analysis and compliance risk evaluation phase. So all applicants for FA must pass both a financial analysis and compliance risk evaluation in order to move on to step 3, which is our business plan review. And we want to take a moment to assure everybody here that based on our experience on scoring from the last 3 funding rounds, more than 99% of all applicants pass from step 2 to step 3. The purpose of step 2 is not to serve as a filtering down or a large elimination of applicants. Rather, it is simply to identify the highest risk applicants or applicants that might represent a going concern. So just to mention that before we move on and describe the rest of what step 2 is. So for the financial analysis evaluation portion, we actually treat unregulated and regulated entities differently. Unregulated entities are analyzed using an automated tool that the CDFI Fund developed called the Application Assessment Tool, or AAT, which produces a score on a 1 to 5 scale using information from your financial data in the application. Applicants must score 1 to 3 using the tool in order to automatically move on to step 3. But if an applicant does score a 4 or 5 based on the tool, we will review your organization's application by hand and determine whether it is actually high risk or not. If after that by hand desk review comes back to, if that's determined to be high risk still, then your application would not move on to step 3. Next slide, please. If you're a regulated applicant, we would assess your financial safety and soundness using your CAMELS or CAMEL rating or an equivalent rating from your regulator, as well as your Community Reinvestment Act CRA rating. So in order to move to step 4 or to step 3 of the process, you will need a CAMELS or CAMEL rating of at least a 3, as well as a CRA rating of at least satisfactory. And note for depository institution holding company applicants, these requirements apply to both you as the applicant as well as the subsidiary through which you intend to carry out the award. Next, all applicants for FA will go through a compliance risk evaluation phase, which also uses the application assessment tool model. And again, here you also have to receive a score of 1 to 3 in order to automatically move on to the next step in the process. But if you do score 4 or 5, we will do a desk review with CDFI Fund staff to determine and verify whether or not the organization represents a high compliance risk. Those scoring 4 or 5 after the desk review will not advance to step 3. Next slide, please. So the third step in the application evaluation process for FA is the business plan review. Every application in this phase is reviewed by a team of 2 external community development finance experts. During this phase, our goal is to ensure that your comprehensive business plan is sound and achievable, and we'll take the sum of the 2 reviewers' business plan review scores, add them together to calculate a total business plan review score. Applications will then be ranked based on total scores and according to their applicant type, with the highest scoring applicants in each category advancing on to step 4. And those different applicant types being CDFI program core applicants, from that group, we will advance an amount up to but not exceeding the top 60% of scores from step 3. And for CDFI and NACA program, CDFI program SECA applicants and NACA program applicants, we will advance an amount up to but not exceeding the top 70% of the applicant pool onto step 4. Next slide, please. So we've provided a list on this slide of the questions that every business plan reviewer will be asking to respond to for every single application. We're not going to read every one of these questions, but please note they are available for viewing online. However, they are grouped according to a couple of key categories, those being business strategy, market and competitive analysis, products and services, management and track record, and growth and projections. Next slide, please. So those applicants moving on from step 3 will advance to step 4 of the evaluation process, which is called the policy objective review. Step 4 is conducted entirely by CDFI fund staff members to measure the extent of an applicant's impact within the communities and populations it serves. So we'll be evaluating during this phase the extent of economic distress of the communities you serve, the opportunities that you create to improve the level of economic distress in those communities and populations, and the extent to which you're collaborating with partners and engaging with stakeholders in a meaningful way. Next slide, please. An additional part of the step 4 policy objective review stage is a due diligence review, also conducted by CDFI fund staff. As part of this, we'll be analyzing and assessing your selected FA objective, your history of performance in managing federal awards, reports and findings from audits where applicable, and your organization's ability to effectively implement federal requirements. Note that some applicants that have advanced to step 4 will not be recommended for an award as a result of this due diligence review. Next slide. Again, here we have listed all of the questions that are part of the policy objective review that every internal CDFI fund reviewer will be asked to respond to for each application. Those are grouped by economic distress, economic opportunities, and community collaboration. Next slide, please. And as we move on, I want to remind folks that there is an evaluation process document on our website, the FA program, that goes into the evaluation process in a much greater detail than I'm doing today. So if you have any additional questions after today's webinar about the evaluation process, please know that that document already exists on the website, and we hope that that could be really helpful for folks. So the last step in the evaluation process is step 5, and this is the point in time where we're determining award amount. This is also conducted by CDFI fund staff and based on an analysis of step 4 policy objective review scores, as well as funding availability and organizations' deployment track record and other programmatic and financial risk factors. We do limit base FA awards to certain percentages of portfolio size from your most recent historic fiscal year. And with that, minimum award sizes are as follows. For core FA applicants, your award is going to be capped at 30% of your total portfolio outstanding, and we have a targeted minimum award size there of $500,000. If you're a CEQA FA applicant, your award would be capped at the greater of 75% of your portfolio outstanding, or $125,000. And if you're a NACA FA applicant, your award would be capped at the greater of 100% of your total portfolio outstanding, or $150,000. Next slide, please. Please note that award amounts may be reduced, and in some cases, applicants may not be funded based upon the analysis conducted as part of step 5. And again, as I mentioned, we do have an evaluation process document on our website, so please do consult that with any additional questions. Next slide, please. So for all supplemental applications, just want to note that we will only review your supplemental applications for an organization that has advanced to step 4 of the base FA evaluation process. So it's step 4 when we'll be taking a look at any supplemental applications that you might have submitted. We'll be evaluating for PPCFA, we'd be evaluating your base FA application separately. So your score for PPCFA will not affect the base FA award evaluation or amount. And applicants that fail to receive a base FA award will not be considered for PPCFA. Those two things apply for all of the supplemental award programs. Next slide, please. So although PPCFA requests aren't scored per se, we will make a final funding recommendation based upon a review that includes, but isn't limited to, your historical track record of deployment in persistent poverty counties, your pipeline of projects there, as well as your narrative response. And the award amount will be determined based on the total number of eligible applicants, as well as funding availability, minimum award size, your requested amount, and other factors. Next slide, please. So for DFFA evaluation, the first three bullets are the same as with PPCFA. Again, we'll only evaluate your application if your base FA application made it to step 4. We'll be evaluating your DFFA application independently. It won't affect your base FA evaluation or amount. And if you don't receive a base FA award, you won't be eligible for DFFA. Finally, DFFA amounts are determined on the basis of the total DFFA score, your requested amount, and on other factors like deployment track record, minimum award size, and funding availability. Okay, can we advance to the next slide, please? Okay. So DFFA applicants will be evaluated on your ability to increase or expand financial, product, services, or development services to address challenges of individuals with disabilities. Examples of those challenges include things like asset development, affordable, accessible, and safe housing, employment opportunities, and access to assistive products and technology that support health and community living. Each DFFA application will be assigned a total score on a scale of 1 to 3, with 1 being the highest score. And after being scored, the applicants will then be grouped according to score. Next slide. The CDFI Fund staff will evaluate all HFFI applications, again, only for an organization whose base FA application progressed to step 4. We'll be evaluating all of the HFFI applications independently. It won't affect the base FA evaluation or amount. And if you don't receive a base FA award, you won't be considered for HFFI. Next slide, please. Each HFFI applicant is going to be assigned a total HFFI score of up to 60 points, and after being scored, you'll be grouped according to HFFI score. The final award amounts will be determined on the basis of your total score, the minimum and max award size, the applicant's requested amount, and other factors, including but not limited to deployment track record and pipeline. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand it back to my colleague Annie, who's going to finish up today's presentation.
Thanks, Matthew. I'm going to touch briefly on award payments. For applicants that end up receiving an award, they need to request the initial payment amount in AMIS, and that amount is what you would reasonably expect to expend within the first 12 months after the award announcement. Initial payment amounts are entered separately in AMIS for each award type. So they are entered separately for base FA, as well as our 3 supplementals if you do choose to apply for those. And the initial payment amounts will be based on that amount entered in the application. And for applicants who are required to submit matching funds, we will also make sure that there is sufficient eligible matching funds for that payment. Next slide, please. Again, all applicants that ultimately receive an FA award, including any supplementals, will have performance goals and measures requiring them to expend 90% of the initial payment amount within the first 12 months of the period of performance. And that PG&M will also require them to expend 100% of the entire award amount by the end of the period of performance. Next slide, please. A recipient will not receive initial payment until it has 100% matching funds in hand, if that's applicable. Again, we've gone over there's certain types of applicants where this would not apply. And an applicant must state this requested award amount in AMIS. If you do not, you will not be allowed to submit the application. It's a required field. Next slide, please. Again, we just want to reiterate the importance of these deadlines. We've gone over them a couple times, so I'm not going to repeat them in great detail, but please review this table, make sure you understand exactly what is due at all the various deadlines, because it's critically important to applying for FA. 2 more slides, please, DeAndre. Perfect. On the slide here, you see various contact information for different areas of the CDFI fund, as well as grants.gov and SAM.gov. The best way to reach us, the most efficient way, is to submit a service request via AMIS. When you submit a service request, you can indicate which area of the CDFI fund it pertains to, whether that is the program team regarding, a question of your FA application, or if it's something related to CDFI certification, you can direct that service request to the certification team. Next slide, please. We have a variety of helpful materials available on our web pages. We have 2 specific web pages related to the programs that we've talked about today. The first is the CDFI program webpage, and then also the Native Initiatives webpage. We are going to pause here, and I'm going to have my colleague pull up a browser so that I can walk you all through where this information lives. So just bear with us while we do a quick screen change here. Awesome. So what you see on your screen right now is the CDFI Fund website. Our website is www.cdfifund.gov. From the main page, which you see now, you're going to hover over Programs and Training, as DeAndre is doing, and then Programs. From there, all of our programs will be listed. To find information related to the CDFI program, you will click CDFI Program. So this is our CDFI program webpage. There's a bunch of information on here, but specifically I want to point out where all the really detailed information is. There's a big blue 2 that DeAndre is hovering over right now for Step 2, Apply. Go ahead and click that, DeAndre. Now this page has the application timeline that we've shown you a few different times for you to reference. And then if you scroll down, there's all of our application webinars. So as you can see, we're here today on December 20th, and you can see that we have other webinars coming up in late January. Our webinars do not have advanced registration, so you can access them immediately prior to the start time using the link that you see here. As DeAndre is scrolling here, all of our financial assistance application materials are here. We have our NOFA, we have these slides, we have guidance, FAQs. There's really a wealth of information to help you complete your application. I am going to have DeAndre, can you go back to the top and we can show folks how to get to Native Initiatives. So again, from Programs and Training, if you go down to Native Initiatives, that is where our NACA program materials live. So again, basic information on the first web page, and just like CDFI, you're going to navigate to the blue 2 for apply. And here you will have some different materials. We have our NACA NOFA on this page, as well as application guidance. Again, the webinars, much of the same information with a couple differences that are NACA specific. But I encourage folks to bookmark these pages. As time goes on with our open funding application round, we will make updates if needed. But really, these are very helpful as you complete the application. Okay, DeAndre, can you please go back to our presentation? So as DeAndre is going back to our presentation, this concludes the information that we have to share out to you. We are, in a moment, I'm going to ask the operator to open it up for questions. But before I do that, I do want to reiterate that at the beginning of this call, Pooja did mention that there's a few things we will not be answering questions about, including the new CDFI certification application. Additionally, questions that are incredibly specific to your organization are best submitted via service request. That way, we can make sure we fully understand the question and get you the appropriate response. Lastly, we have many team members on the call with different areas of expertise. So if you ask a question, we may tell you to hold on just for a few moments while we converse to make sure we give you the correct answer and kind of coordinate internally. With that, I will ask the operator to please transition to the question and answer portion. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to ask a question, please press *1, unmute your phone, and clearly state your name for question introduction. If you'd like to retract your question, please press *2. Again, to ask a question, please press *1, unmute your phone, and clearly state your name for question introduction. One moment. Our first question comes from Mike Jones. Mike, your line is open.
Thank you. If I understand right, the PPC is designated by county. If that is so, on the outcomes, are the outcomes evaluated county-wide results, or are they evaluated by a drill down to census tracts for low and moderate income?
Hi, Mike. Mike, thank you for that question. I think that essentially what we're looking for in terms of a performance goal for your PPC FA application is that you deploy an amount of money equal to 100% of your total PPC FA award in a persistent poverty county. So does that help clarify at all what the expectations are in terms of what happens if you get a PPC FA award, or is there something else that we could provide?
I think that does it. I will take a look at all the supplement material, and if I have further questions, I'll contact.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Vicki Parker. Vicki, your line is open.
I have three very quick ones. The first one, the supplemental programs, are you eligible to apply for all three of those, or is it just one or two?
Yes, you are eligible. Oh, go ahead, Annie. I'll let you respond to that one.
Vicki, thanks so much for your question. You can apply to more than one supplemental program. You're certainly not limited to applying for only one, as long as you meet the eligibility requirements and do that type of work.
Thank you. My second one, real quickly, is in terms of the Title VI form, I understand there are, I guess, 2 submissions. So I guess I want to be clear. Is that 2 separate submissions? Like there's a step to submit the Title VI, and then there's this step to submit the entire application. I want to make sure if I'm, that if I hit Title VI, I'm not submitting the whole application. Are those 2 separate actions?
Thank you for that question. We're just going to take one moment to coordinate, and we'll be right back to answer that.
Okay.
Okay, so the Title VI form is completed in AMIS, and then you link that to your application and then submit the application. Does that answer your question?
I think yes, that does. Yes, so I can't submit that earlier than the 15th. It has to be when I submit the entire application, I'm assuming. And that's fine. And then the final thing with the projections, are those just projections based off of your FA, or are those projections based off of like your entire financial numbers, or is it just projections for whichever your objective is? The 3-year projections.
Hi. I think that essentially what you're looking to provide is it depends on what field in the application financial data table you're talking about, right? So if you pay attention or read closely the guidance as you're filling this out, there are some appendices in the guidance based on applicant type that go into a greater detail about what sort of things you should include in a various field. But there are some fields in the application financial data table where we're asking you to provide projections, for instance, over your entire portfolio. Other fields are asking specifically for projections in an eligible market or a target market. And be careful as well, because in the application guidance, you'll note that there are certain types of activities that we ask you to exclude when you're looking at both your historic and projected activity. And the reason for that is because the information in those tables ultimately becomes your organization's PG&Ms.
Gotcha.
Is that
Thank
helpful?
You. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay.
Our next question comes from Kate. Kate, your line is open.
Hi, my name's Kate. I just wanted to ask simply, with regards to grant writing, does that need to be done by a professional grant writer?
Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for that question. We do not have specific requirements on a professional grant writer submitting an application. We do in AMIS, we do ask before you launch an application that you make sure your contacts are up to date, and an authorized representative, I believe, must submit the application.
Okay, thank you so much.
No, we do not have requirements on the qualifications of the individual completing the application.
Okay, thank you so much.
Our next question comes from Karen. Karen, your line is open.
Hi, my question is, if a NACA maintains at least 50% of its activity in Native communities, can it add additional other targeted populations to its target market?
Hi, Karen. I think that's a question that we might want to address via service request, because it's sort of bridging the gap between program and certification issues. Would it be okay to submit that one via service request, and we'll route your question in the best way we can?
I could. The reason I'm asking is because of the objective. If you wanted to serve a new targeted population as your objective for the application.
I see what you're saying. I think maybe still, though, we could take that one separately offline because it's a little bit of a very particular question for your organization. If that's all right, because there are certification implications to those sorts of things, I just want to make sure we're providing you the best response we can. So if you could just submit that one as a service request, I think we'd be able to help you out better.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Our next question comes from Mark Edelman. Mark, your line is open.
Yes, I was wondering about climate-related impacts and goals. Seems like I remember reading something about that in the NOFA, but in the presentation today, it looks like that's baked into business plans and activities that you're doing under each of these potential operations, or how is that? What's your sense on those possibilities?
Well, certainly climate-centered financing is an eligible line of business for the types of financial products and services that your organization is going to offer. I don't think we have any necessarily baked-in benchmarks or expectations about that for the application narrative itself. But certainly I think to the extent that your organization is planning on making climate-centered financing a sort of centerpiece of your activities, I think the narrative questions would afford you some good opportunities to provide an explanation of your intended activities there and your intended impacts and outcomes resulting from that kind of activity.
Okay. And somewhat a different tone in terms of disability financing for populations with disabilities. If we're currently doing some of that under our existing target populations of low income, is that something that really needs to be done as a separate target population, or what's your guidance on that, or is that covered in a different under certification?
Just give us 1 second on that one. We'll be right back to answer you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think that, as we said before, the persons with disabilities is an eligible market, which there's some slight distinctions between what is an eligible market versus what is your target market. And because of the sort of cross-program and whatnot implications to that, I think that's another question that we would probably prefer to have you submit by service request, just so that we can make sure that we're providing you with the best information that we can.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Our next question comes from Jose Manales. Jose, your line is open.
Great. So 2 questions. The first question is, so we know what an emerging CDFI is, but what is considered a small CDFI within SECA classification?
Hi, thank you so much. I just want to confirm that you're looking for the how we define a small and emerging CDFI.
Yeah. So the only thing that we would like to know is what is a small CDFI? What is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our NOFA, we define these terms. To be an eligible SECA applicant, One moment, please. So we have asset thresholds in our NOFA that are for the applicant's most recent historic fiscal year, and it depends by institution type. So for insured depository institutions and depository institution holding companies, the CECA thresholds go up to $250 million. For insured credit unions and state-insured credit unions, up to $100 million. Venture capital funds up to $5 million, and other CDFIs also up to $5 million. Does that help?
Yeah. Is there a year? Is it a 3-year threshold on that as well? Like if you're a new CDFI, it has to be less than 3 years?
So you'd have to have begun operations on or after January 1st, 2020.
Okay. Thank you for that. And my next question is, can you use, so when you submit the application, can you use it for more than one objective?
No. Applicants are limited to selecting one FA objective.
Okay. Thank you.
If you'd like to ask a question, please press *1, unmute your phone, and clearly state your name for question introduction. If you'd like to retract your question, please press *2. Our next question comes from Ruby from the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation. Ruby, your line is open.
Hi, yes, thank you. I just wanted to get clarity on the definition for a small and emerging CDFI. Could you clarify that, please?
Yeah, just one moment, please.
Annie, I'll take that one. So I think, as Annie just noted, there are CECA asset thresholds outlined in the NOFA. So a CECA-eligible organization would have to meet the asset thresholds by financial institution type, or they have to have begun operations within the period outlined in the NOFA. So I would take a closer look at that to just make sure that if you're looking at your organization, it meets the CECA eligibility requirements and thresholds outlined there. And that table is Table 8 in the CDFI program NOFA as well as the NACA program NOFA.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next question comes from Polly Logue. Polly, your line is open.
Thank you. Just point of clarification for FA objectives, new geographic area and new financial product. The guidance provides the 5% threshold, 5% or less of outstanding portfolio average over the 3 most recent historic fiscal years for geographic area, and 5% or less of outstanding portfolio as of most recent historic fiscal year for product. In prior years, when we've asked that question, there's a big distinction between outstanding portfolio and on-balance sheet originations, and we've always been advised to use the annual on-balance sheet loan originations for that calculation, not outstanding portfolio.
Just one moment, please.
So thanks, Holly. I just want to make sure, I know you said you were providing a clarification, but is there a particular question in there that you wanted us to?
Yes, my question was for you to clarify. The guidance says outstanding portfolio, but do you mean outstanding portfolio like a loan trial balance with balances as of year end, or do you mean 5% of the average of the on-balance sheet originations for each year? They're two very distinct calculations.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So I think if it's possible, I know we've said this a couple of times already, I think that's something that we'd like to opine on a little bit more. And I don't know that we can provide you with an immediate response to it. So if it's possible for you to submit that as a service request, we will disseminate response to you and provide a clarification publicly as well to the extent that that's necessary.
Sure, be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Arissa Kuya. Arissa, your line is open.
Hi, good afternoon. So the guidance is pretty clear that ERP transactions shouldn't be included in the inputs since it won't count towards the PG&Ms. For CMF recipients, it does say to include CMF activity for the inputs. So does that mean those transactions would also count towards PG&Ms?
Hi, yeah, thank you for that question. And yes, thanks for bringing that to everyone's attention as well. Should not include ERP in your projections because what's in your projections will ultimately go to your PG&Ms, and you cannot double count things, transactions for ERP to meet your PG&Ms for FA. That is not true for our CMS. So you can include your transactions for CMS as part of your projections. And however, please note too, I think there's a frequently asked question about this in our FAQ document that was released last week. There are a couple of programs that you should exclude from your projections and historic activity. So just take a look at that and make sure that you understand what it is exactly that you should put in those projections.
Great. And would that apply to PPC as well? So would CMF transactions count towards PPC, PG&Ms?
I don't think we can answer any questions about what they're doing on CMS. That's actually a different program team. But we can only respond to what goes into our own PG&Ms for FA. So the other way around is a little bit of a different story. For a question like that, I would submit a service request and direct it to the Capital Magnet Fund team.
Thank you.
Yep.
Our next question comes from Cimarron Lozier. Cimarron, your line is open.
Yes. Does the CDFI application need to be specific about, for example, technology that might be acquired to automate application workflows that would allow us to deploy more capital? Or can you just be general about it and acquire technology that can be used?
Quick question of clarification. I believe you said certification application. Are you referring to the certification application or an application for the FA program?
Application for the FA program.
Okay, and you're asking about whether you can you repeat the question again?
Well, there's technology that would improve the workflow and automate the application process, and one wanted to acquire that and use funding for that. Does it have to be explicitly described, the vendor and the type of technology, or can you simply say we're going to be using technology to improve our workflow to deploy more capital?
Yeah, I think so. To respond to that question, I think that you'd want to take a close look at the eligible uses of FA funds, because FA funds are generally used for financial products, financial services, those sorts of activities. So we do have a technical assistance program, which we talked about yesterday, that offers funds available for equipment and supplies and things like that. But in terms of FA, one needs to be careful about exactly what kinds of things you're planning on spending the money for. There is a certain amount of FA available for administrative expenses that's detailed in the NOFA, but in general, FA is for financial products, services, development services, et cetera.
Right, so not for technology. That you're thinking that would be TA, but they didn't specifically mention products. It was more around supplies, which isn't really the same thing, obviously.
Yeah, I think that equipment and supplies may encompass the definition of what you're referring to. But yeah, I think if you need any more clarity on that beyond what's in the NOFA or the guidance, I would check the definition because I believe that those terms are defined in there. And if if what you're looking to spend the money on doesn't seem to fit either program, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to us directly by service request, and we'll help walk you through a little bit more what eligible uses are for both programs.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew.
Yep.
Our next question comes from Marianne Cerise. Marianne, your line is open.
Thank you. I had a question asking a clarification on what constitutes a new financial product. The presentation explained, 5% or less of an outstanding portfolio. But can you just provide additional clarification on how the fund defines a new financial product?
Sure. I think honestly you've hit upon the definition of a new financial product. It is one in which no more than 5% of your total portfolio outstanding is devoted to that particular new financial product or new geographic area, as it were, whichever FA objective you're applying for. I think basically what you're talking about is meets the definition of those sorts of new products.
So if the terms or the rates were similar to other products, just as long as it was less than 5%, that specific type of product to like a specific segment of our market, that would constitute a new financial product?
Yes, I think so, if I understand you correctly. Do you have a specific example that you'd like to cite?
Well, we're doing more outreach to diversity, our own diversity outreach, and specifically looking at developers of color. So it wouldn't be less, it's less than 5% of our current portfolio, but some of the terms and the rates and the loan to value would be similar to what we provide, to a broader market. So that's why I was just trying to get a handle on like what constitutes a new financial product.
Okay.
Sounds like it's as simple as, yeah.
I would say potentially, but to avoid going too much into that, your particular situation and example, I would say let's talk about that one offline. But I think in general there's the potential for that kind of a project or that kind of a product to meet the definition of a new financial product to the extent I think that's how your organization is defining it, right? Like it is a separate financial product, a separate activity in your business.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, the outreach, the sourcing, the technical assistance would be very unique to that. Okay. But what I think you're saying is to just submit a service request just to confirm that?
You can certainly reach out to us, yeah, and we could talk to you more specifically about your example. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Vicki Parker. Your line is open.
Yes, thank you. My question is regarding to the use of the funding of the award fund. I know that we can only apply for one FA, but can any of those funds be used for any of the other objectives, or any portion of the awards be used for any of the other objectives?
Vicki, do you mind repeating the question? I think we understood it, but I just want to make sure. Are you asking if you select one particular FA objective, can you still use FA award funding towards other FA objectives? Is that the question? Or if you don't mind repeating the question if I didn't get that correctly.
Yes, that is in essence, that is the question, because we'll still have other activities that will fit in those other objectives. So that is my question. Can some of the funds be used? Like if you have additional financial, if you want to increase your financial product, you might also offer another service to supplement that increase. So that, that is my question.
Yes, and the answer to that is yes. You can use FA award funding towards the eligible uses that are outlined in the NOFA. You will be required to select one FAO objective, and based on that FAO objective, you will have a performance goal and measure that's related to that. As long as you can meet that performance goal and measure and have no, you can kind of use it towards whatever eligible uses make the most sense for your organization and for your award.
Understood. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Stephen Winheld. Your line is open.
Yes, I'm not sure if this was already covered, but if the award turns out to be a loan, what will be the interest rate on the loan?
Hi. Thank you for that question. That is listed in the NOFA. And if you give me 1 second, I can tell you exactly where it is. On Table 9 of the NOFA, you'll find the terms of what you would see if your award was in the form of a loan. Essentially, you'd be looking at a 13-year term on the loan with semi-annual interest-only payments in the first 10 years and fully amortizing payments due in each year 11 through 13. Your interest rate would be fixed at 4.19%, and that is based off of U.S. Treasury Department 10-year Treasury note rates.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Our next question comes from Christine. You may proceed.
Thank you. This is Christine Lyas calling from California, and I have just a couple of very brief questions. So when you talk about the $5 million cap on funding for awardees, does that cap include ERP and RRP?
Hi. I believe the answer to that question is no. We're only talking about CDFI or NACA program base FA, PPC FA, and just those things. But do remember that too, it also counts towards your organization's subsidiaries and affiliates. So all of those would be totaled up.
And my other question for PPC, I was looking at the application assistance document yesterday for the narrative questions, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see the narrative question for PPC. Is there a narrative question for PPC, and where is it?
There is one narrative. Right, there is one narrative question for PPC. Let me check the application guidance document. So there is a section on PPC in the guidance around page 80. And the question is quite straightforward, but I don't. In a quick review of the application guidance right now, I am not seeing the language of the question specifically. However, it's a very straightforward question. It's one question. If you do launch the PPC-FA application within AMIS, you can certainly see it there. But, yeah. Sorry, about that.
And if you want to submit a service request to us, we can make sure to get you that question in writing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then just my last question, I think I know the answer to it, but I just want to confirm. When you talk about that we all need to spend 90% of the payment within the first 12 months, is it okay for us to spend 100% within 12 months?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
And on that note, too, just note that, you can start expending the funds on the day of the award announcement, even before you actually have a check in hand. You can count expenses anytime after the day of the award announcement as eligible.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Next, we will hear from Andy Nair. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you. My question is pretty similar to one that was asked previously, but it's whether or not a new type of collateral type counts as a new financial product. So it's still a consumer loan, but it would be supported by a different type of collateral.
I think that one might be best answered via service request. I don't think we have enough details here to be able to answer that question. And if we're able to do it via service request, we might be able to kind of give you a better response.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, as a reminder, if you would like to ask a question at this time, you can press star 1 and record your name when prompted. Our next question comes from Vicki Frank. Your line is open.
Thank you. Hi there. I see that there's a couple of new eligible markets, people with disabilities, Filipino. I'm wondering if a CDFI has always done a significant portion of loans to that market, and it will be a significant part of their eligible market projections, how they should handle that in their historic and current year data. When it wasn't an eligible market, but it was a significant portion of their lending. And then for other CDFIs who may never have tracked it historically. So I'm curious how to handle that historically.
Yeah, that's a good question, Vicki, and that's one that we are looking into the response for, and then we can let you know what the response is, as well as provide an update to our FAQ guidance once we have a response to that, so that others on the call who have the same question can also get the response for that.
Great, thank you. And another question, is there, I know that there was a 2020 census tracts came out, and I was curious also if there was any guidance on which census tracts should be used on the historical data as well as on the projections as people are thinking about that.
A good question. We'll take that one request as well. Just want to make sure we get the right response to you, just because some of this also intersects with our reporting team and our compliance team, and we just want to make sure we give you the most accurate response possible.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question will come from Vikram Bila. Your line is open. And once again, I believe I heard the name as Vikram Bila. Your line is open for your question.
Is that me?
That is you, sir. I do apologize if I mispronounced your name.
Oh, hi, my name's Jacob. It's fine. So when you have a target market change, like 1.7, and let's say you go through another process other than a certification, like basically if you're not using necessarily the certification, the service request feature to change that target market, I know we're not answering questions about the new certification criteria, but that might happen. Would that in any way invalidate a 1.7 FA award? Should I repeat myself?
Yeah. Actually, oh, go ahead. If you don't mind repeating your question out.
All right. So if you get a target market change FA award, right? Additional OTP, and you say go through a different process than the service request based change that is listed in the FA, criteria that you gave us. In order to add that OTP on to your target market, will that in any way impact the FA award that's just based around, the spirit of adding an OTP to your target market?
Matthew and others can chime in. The only other way to add a new targeted population would be through the certification application. And so I'm not really sure there would be another avenue to add a targeted population in a different way beyond through your FAO objective, or which also involves going through certification and a certification application. But maybe if I'm not understanding that correctly, feel free to follow up, or we can try to understand your question better.
Yeah. So basically, in the NOFA, I think it is, the guidance on how to add that OTP is to go through a service request. Like, there's a service request specific process. However, a lot of CDFIs are going to go through the new certification application that does allow you to change your target market. We're just trying to make sure that if we were to say, very luckily receive an FA award, also change our target market through that certification application that we have to go through due to the new criteria, that won't cause any issue, given that the FA award guidance is that we should change our target market based through the AMIS service request protocol.
Okay. I think this is something we should probably consult with our Office of Certification policy folks with, and so I think it would be best to submit this via service request so we can make sure that any response we give you, we can run it by them and make sure that there's no conflicts with kind of the certification side of things as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We are showing no further questions at this time. Again, as a reminder, if you would like to ask a question, you can press *1 and record your name when prompted. I do have questions coming through. One moment, please. Next, we will hear from Everett White. Your line is open.
Hey, good afternoon. Sorry, I guess my question may not have come through the first time. I've got a question on the business plan scoring criteria, and specifically Table 2, where it's got the total of 50 points. And I was wondering if y'all could shed light on what's involved in each one of the sections. So, for example, market and competitive analysis, 7 points. Is that just question 10, for example, or is that something more than that?
Hi, Everett. You're talking about a table in the NOFA. I'm sorry, which document table?
Sorry, I'm talking about the table in the base FA application evaluation process. So page 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Give us 1 second, please.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, sorry about that, Everett.
Yep.
If you actually see the, so you're referring to specifically to mission and community needs, or just the entirety of Table 2 and how that breaks down?
Yeah, I'm really talking about the entirety. I mean, if you look at the narrative questions, it looks like business strategy is 4 through 8. It looks like products and services is 9. It looks like marketing and competitive analysis is 10. Growth and projections 15. But it's not clear if it's limited to that, and it's not clear what's all involved in management and track record, at least to me.
So I think when our business plan reviewers do their review, they do take into account a sort of holistic look at the narrative, the financial data, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that there's like a one-to-one, this question is for this category, this question is for this other category kind of situation going on.
Okay.
And hopefully that answers it. But we do provide in Table 1, just previous to that other table, there's a list of the very specific questions that those business plan reviewers are being asked to respond to. And so there is a little bit of opportunities for things to be pulled from various places in the narrative, et cetera.
Okay. That makes sense. And I guess the last thing I'll say on that is just what's triggering the question is if trying to make sure we talk about market and competitive analysis, and the only place that I can think about where that comes in is question 10, which is like 2,000 characters. And the same thing with products and services, it's question 9, so it's 12 points and it's 6,000 characters. And I just want to make sure that there's not any other guidance that, or anything else that would indicate where to talk about these specific sections. But what I'm hearing you say is that it's not like there's not a clear question correlation to each section.
Correct. Yep. It's more of a holistic look at the entire application. Everyone reads the whole application and then responds to the questions accordingly.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Our next question will come from Debbie Reed. Your line is open.
Hi, thanks. My question has to do with development services. Earlier in the call, you said that you could, there's not an objective for development services anymore, but that you could still use funds for development services. Did you mean that in the same way that you just answered somebody else's question, that as long as you meet your objectives, you can do anything you want with the funds? Or are you saying that you could carve out a piece for development services?
Well, go ahead, Pooja.
Go ahead. You can go ahead, too. You can add on to – I'll take it, and then you can add on, Matthew. It is correct, but I do want to caveat and clarify. You can't just spend money on whatever you want. It does have to be an eligible use as outlined in the NOFA. It does not have to be – you will have a PG&M related to directly that correlates directly to the FAO objective that you have selected for your application, but you may still use award funds towards other eligible uses, such as development services, as long as you are still able to meet the overall performance goals and measures outlined for your FAO objectives. I think just as a reminder, it's the FAA, this program and kind of the FAA award money is a balance sheet building program. So as a result of that, there is a fair amount of flexibility in terms of how you can utilize the FAA award funding, but it does have to be used towards eligible uses, and that is outlined in the NOFA pretty specifically.
So let me just clarify. So what you're saying is that for reporting purposes, when you're reporting in on new uses of funds, you could specify that you use money on any of the eligible uses?
Yes, correct.
Okay. I have one other clarification, if you don't mind, because I wasn't quite sure about this one. But when talking about the projections, I heard that the projections should only reflect what you intend to do in your target market or an eligible market. Is that correct? Could you just elaborate on that a little bit more? Because when you say projections, in my mind, I'm thinking, the financial input sheet has projections, and one would, if you have your historical numbers, which reflect all of your lending activity, and then you have going forward your projections just showing what's in your eligible market or in your target market, there might be a difference. So I'm not sure. In my mind, that's what I was picturing, but perhaps I'm misunderstanding this.
Sure, that's a good question. Thank you for asking it. Essentially, I think we mentioned before, there are different fields in the financial data inputs table in the application, and some of those are asking for like whole portfolio information, and some of them are asking for information that is your portfolio in an eligible market or your certified target market. Your PG&Ms are going to involve activity in an eligible market or target market, so those are the fields that are going to feed into your PG&Ms ultimately. And we ask for those numbers both historic and projected. So when we're comparing historic activity to projected activity, it's always going to be, comparing apples to apples. So we would be comparing historic activity in an eligible market or target market to projected activity in an eligible market or target market. So any things that you exclude or include in your projections would similarly be excluded or excluded in your historic activity of those fields. Does that provide any extra clarity?
Yes, that is clear, because on that financial input sheet, as you say, there is your entire, balance sheet, for example, and that looks at the entirety of your lending activity, and your projections that look at the entirety of your activity. And then, as you said, there are some lines that look just at what activity you had in your target market and in your eligible market. So you're saying that for the purposes of projecting out what you're going to do with your objective, that's where you're taking the data, and that's where we should pay attention to.
Yep, and Amos, when you're doing your application too, you'll get model PG&Ms, and we'll be looking at those data sort of in real time as you fill out your FA objective. So you'll be able to see the application will sort of pull automatically fields for your application financial data inputs table directly into your projections and PG&Ms and whatever FA objective you choose.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
One of those. Sure. Yep.
Thank you. We are showing no further questions at this time, but once again, if you would like to ask a question, you can press *1 and record your name when prompted. One moment, please, for any additional questions. We are still showing no further questions at this time.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Sheila. I think if there are no more questions, I can hand it back to Pooja to close us up, and thank everybody for being with us today. So Pooja, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I will just echo Matthew's thank you to everyone for hanging on there. I know this was quite a call and quite long. For those whose questions we were unable to answer on the line, please do submit a service request, and we will get to that service request and do our best to get you an answer as soon as possible. And thank you again for everybody for joining. We appreciate it and hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you. That does conclude today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time.